talk a little bit about Payback, talk about a little about this new era, and what do you all think about the fact that they're branding it this way?
I mean, well, first of all, I got to note this because RJ, you mentioned this to me on Sunday, and then you said it to me, Tom, the other day when I first saw you after Payback. I know you didn't watch the full show initially, but you did watch the first match. New era, it's going to be a great thing. It's a new era, new talent, new fresh faces. Enzo Amore gets hurt in the first freaking match. Like, I mean, I know that's not something. It's not like a missed booking opportunity, but it wasn't a good sign for the new era. But I thought overall the show was really good, which we'll talk about. But this new era, I want to say it's a new era because we've been talking about this for weeks. The quality of Raw, SmackDown, even NXT has been even better than it was before Mania. I want to believe that this is a new time in WWE with Enzo and Cass, Apollo Crews, Baron Corbin. You have Luke Gallows, Carl Anderson, all these fresh faces on the main roster, all making strides, and even guys like Sami Zayn, Kevin Owens, AJ Styles, all flourishing in their respective feuds. I want to think it's a new era, but when they shove it down our throats, a la the Divas Revolution, it doesn't feel like a new era. They're just trying to tell us it's a new era. Don't tell us it's a new era. Show us it's a new era.
I think that you show that, much like we've talked about off the books here, is that you show that by changing the visual aesthetic. I think that when you say it's a new era, and your pay-per-views pretty much only reflect that with the different graphic design, but the stage design remains the same, the in-ring curtains remain the same, the placement of the announce tables remain the same, the song at the top remains the same for Raw, for SmackDown, the colors haven't changed, and this just totally bucks against the traditions that the WWE have done themselves. They have not shied away from introducing entire new stages for the original incarnation of Monday Night Raw, which was, much more ECW looking in theater design with a huge early 90s flair to it.
Manhattan Center, yep.
Lots of neon lights and things like that, to the Attitude Era Raw design with, the firework missiles hitting the stage with massive explosions, barbed wire, like very scratchboard looking logos, and just gritty 90s grunge type overtones to the whole thing. And then into the Ruthless Aggression era, a lot more polish, all the way to the PG era where we have even more polish. So to say that this is a new era of competition, that's not untrue. But to say this is a new era in the WWE, it certainly doesn't feel that way yet. And with the announcement coming out of Payback that Shane McMahon and Stephanie McMahon now share some kind of joint custody over how Raw is booked and controlled, it doesn't seem to be shaking up many things too much at all. With Stephanie's pull in her direction towards her ideas and Shane's pull towards what we've seen in the past couple of weeks, I don't really know that we're going to see what this new era could truly do or be, because we are still pulled in both directions.
Is this the year 2000 with the McMahons in charge? Is this 2006, 2008? I mean, we've seen the McMahons in charge before. I just want... Not that we don't need to have any authority figures, but I mean, we can have a Jack Tunney-like figure, and they're doing it right now in NXT with a guy like William Regal, who's not on every single show. He shows up when it means something, when he has something to deliver that has a purpose, and he just doesn't show up to take up 20 minutes of the opening of the show. And I think, in theory, it can be a good idea. I mean, we talked about it on Sunday, RJ. I like Shane. Stephanie is great in her role. She deserves a lot of credit. They can have some fun with this little angle of brother versus sister in charge of Raw, as long as they don't get overexposed, a lot like the Authority did. And I think, like you said, Tom, aesthetically, and they've not shied away from this in the past, like you said, Tommy, in that they have changed up the layout before. Raw is War. They weren't coming out every single week saying, "Oh, this is the Attitude Era." No, it felt like the Attitude Era. That's why people they coined it the Attitude Era. And I have to ask you this: do you feel like at this point in time, not that Vince has always been afraid of change, but in his old age, do you feel that he is afraid of change at this point in time?
I really don't. I mean, if you look at his work on Camp WWE, if you look at some of the things that he said very frankly and candidly on the Stone Cold podcast, only about a year ago, most of those things have stayed the course and have completely come true. I think structurally, the way that they present a lot of these things, they, from what I've read, from what we've seen and what we know, they roll these things out so slowly. Look at the logo change. the Scratchboard Attitude Era logo hung on for how many years? Beyond
15 years?
Beyond the original WWF logo, you know, and then changing to WWE, and when they were forced to change to WWE, they still kept the Scratchboard logo.
I mean, even look at recently the change from Divas division of women's wrestling.
It took
forever, but it's finally happened. Okay, yeah.
So I feel like for whatever reason they have invested in those aesthetic props and in what they've built and on all of that in the production side of things, and they do not want to go for some reason and change Raw and SmackDown to look completely different. Mm-hmm. They have no problem doing this once a month with creating brand new everything in advertising and design for their main pay-per-views.
But they still have yet to change up the stage.
The
like
stage has
that
not.
Bothers me.
The only
but
there is. The only thing different that usually the pay-per-views don't have a ramp.
That's the only thing. That's it.
That's the only difference.
For SummerSlam, I felt like, okay, I know they only do it with WrestleMania, but SummerSlam is like the WrestleMania of the summer. So they'll at least do something for SummerSlam, and it was the same thing. It felt like we were at Raw.
It felt like we were at Raw. And anytime, at this point, if you're not outside, it just doesn't feel different.
Yeah,
you know, much. If it's indoors, it might as well be Monday. I mean, for a lot of these guys too, and sometimes for how the matches are, it feels like it might as well be Monday.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see. I'm gonna reserve judgment here. I think that they just started this and they're trying to get buzz and momentum built around it now. If they debut all the surprises up front, then they lose the impact of really building an audience to see a big change. But they got to do it at some point.
Yeah, I think they, like you said, they need a change. It's not like they need a huge change, but like you said, you need a new era. You can't just say like, oh, new era, same stuff as it was before.
But I truly don't want to believe that they are that pandering and think that little of our intelligence. I truly want to believe that they are playing to our strengths and they have something really cool that they want to do and they want us to go along for the ride. That's me being as positive as I can about the whole thing. The other side of the coin is much easier to dismiss. It's much easier to say, you've spent all your money hiring all this new talent that the internet has told you to go out and hire, and now you just want us to pay you back by watching it. And that's all, and you're just going to pander to us and tell us that this is all brand new, and it's still the same group of creative writers. It's still Road Dogg. It's still Michael P.S. Hayes.
Hate that, man.
It is what it is.
I feel like if anything...
Oh, but you just don't understand. You have no idea, and blah, 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 and everything else that we don't know.
Give the creative team credit.
Oh, give them credit. They write a terrible show almost every week, week in and week out there. They write on a street called Bad Street, baby.
God.
Jesus.
Speaking of the Hall of Fame, I am a robot. I had to mention that. That was so funny. we still talk about when you did that impression after the show a couple weeks ago.
What, Jackie?
Yeah.
Strictly written by Vince McMahon. I swear to God.
Greatest thing.
I am Jacqueline. I am a robot from the future. I was sent here to wrestle and become...
Pretty much. He sounded so scripted. It was ridiculous.
Sorry to interrupt you. You can continue. I just wanted to...
Public speaking is tough on everybody. I mean, that was an era where... You know, they needed physical competitors. They didn't need people on the mic. Stone Cold Steve Austin and The Rock would come up and chew up like 45 minutes, and then a McMahon would come out, and we'd be into the second hour of Raw before a single match had happened. So I don't think many people needed to develop those mic skills.
Not at that point, no. That's why I cringe when I watch like Attitude Era content on the network. I mean, it's great, but I feel like if you didn't grow up with it, there's not that nostalgia feel, and when
I watch it, and I was there, I watched almost all of it. It's just like, no, but I remember criticizing this when I was a kid and being like, could you please wrestle? There's a reason why we all started watching WCW. Turns out they were wrestling on that show.
What a concept.
And Vince at the time was very blatant about being more of a Jerry Springer confrontational show than he was about being a professional wrestling show, because he felt that wrestling had become much like comic books in
passe.
Yeah, you know, just kiddie, passe, not something that's going to grip the nation, you know, with a good story. So it wasn't in the wrestling. It wasn't in I'm going to beat you and pin you. It was in I'm going to insult you and I'm going to humiliate you. And WCW was very much about old school wrestling. You know,
wrestling,
you know, Georgia Wrestling, and it's Ted Turner's. So, it'll be interesting to see what this new era brings.